An Egyptian television news program says that Turkey is clearly a terrorist state with a broad reach. It reports that Turkey is supplying weapons to the terrorist group Boko Haram in Nigeria. 10 TV host Nashat Al-Delhi reported on a leak confirming an intercepted phone call from a few years back confirming the action. He reported in part, "Today's leak confirms without a doubt that Erdogan, his state, his government, and his party are transferring weapons from Turkey to, this is a shock, to where you may ask, to Nigeria. And to whom? To the Boko Haram organization." Well, Raymond Ibrahim, a journalism fellow at the David Horowitz Freedom Center and an expert on the Middle East and Islam, joins us now with more on this. Welcome, Raymond.
Hello, Heather.
Are you surprised by this report? What's your take on it?
No, I'm not surprised. And my take on it is that the actual tape that was made that you referenced and you quoted was made apparently in 2014 or 15. And it was reported widely in certain areas in the U.S. and in the West, not so much, and not much came out of it. And the reason, I think, is because Erdogan wasn't so, didn't have his fingers so much in Islamist politics outside of his own nation. But now that we've seen, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the ISIS Islamic State Caliph who was killed recently, and he was found just 3 miles from the Turkish border, which is in fact one of the last, or if not the last bastion of jihadi so-called freedom fighters of attacking the Syrian government. It's brought it up again, the fact that everyone is saying, well, look, he's supporting ISIS. So now we're remembering, and that was, I think, the point of the Egyptian show. We're bringing back to see that there's some continuity here. It's not just right next door to Syria, to Turkey, meaning Syria. He's involved with some of the absolute worst Islamic terror groups. Remember, Boko Haram, which its name loosely means Western education is forbidden, haram. Was basically doing what ISIS is notorious for years before ISIS. So the whole, head chopping, crucifying, massacres, enslaving women and children, burning people alive. Boko Haram was doing that. And one of the things that international observers have been noticing, especially increasingly, is that their armaments, their weapons, are very sophisticated. And it's even spilled into the Fulani tribesmen in Nigeria and in other parts in Africa. For example, I'm sure you know Burkina Faso, also in Western Africa, attacks on Christians have become horrific. Just in the last few months, there have been so many killed, and always in the context of checking out if they're wearing crosses, if they can say the Islamic Creed or not, and then being butchered and so forth. And those tribesmen, the Fulani, who are essentially living almost on a primitive scale, appear with very advanced weaponry.
Well, that's really interesting, which would kind of seem to perhaps give more weight to this idea that perhaps Turkey is collaborating with Boko Haram. What would the benefit be to Turkey of collaborating with Boko Haram?
Well, there's several theories. One is Erdogan basically is an ardent Islamist, and he is supporting and behind any Islamist movement in any country. He's the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. He was allied with Qatar of Al Jazeera as his ally. And so you can see him, he's trying to help develop these Islamist groups so they can overthrow more secular states. Though, in fact, in Nigeria, an aside that I think is important, the president himself, Muhammad Buhari, of Nigeria, who's Muslim, Nigeria is half Christian, half Muslim, has been accused himself of being behind the so-called genocide, which a lot of international groups have called what's happening to Christians in Nigeria, that he himself is complicit in this armament. So he could very well be an ally of Erdogan and so forth, and it's just some sort of Islamist overall coalition globally.
I want to ask you, the President Trump, of course, met with the President of Turkey yesterday. Do you think he's aware of these kind of ties to terrorism? And what are your thoughts on that meeting yesterday?
Well, in general, I think, what he's aware of is really hard to tell. But I think the meeting in general, Trump and presidents won't necessarily bring up all these things, obviously. So when he met, for example, in Saudi Arabia with the king and so forth, he doesn't really mention human rights abuses and so forth for whatever strategic tactical reasons. So it's really hard to predict, but I think he needs to be aware because Erdogan's he's got his fingerprints everywhere now. It's not just Syria, which is very obvious, but now there's older evidence of him involved in Nigeria and also in Turkey itself, the Christian population, the minority there. And remember, Turkey was originally entirely Christian. It was Anatolia. It was actually where St. Paul wrote all his epistles to. They're really being treated badly and discriminated against, and a lot of hate preaching in Turkey is increasingly against Christians and Jews. Definitely Turkey's going down the wrong path with Erdogan, though many Turks themselves remain committed to the Ataturk ideal of secularism.
Well, we are out of time, but Raymond Ibrahim, thank you for your time and your insights here.
Thanks.